Fans of baseball go into the season hoping their team wins it all. But besides that, they hope to see records broke, rookies coming up, and setting themselves up to be future stars, and moments that they'll never forget. And no season in the 21st century has delivered that more like 2001. From a rookie leading a team to a record amount of wins, to a new home run chase, to unity amidst tragedy, and an all-time World Series to finish it off. So let's look at how the 2001 season became the defining season of the century.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Going into the season, there was still one team to beat, and that was the New York Yankees. They had won the last 3 titles, and 4 of the last 5. They had a rather quiet offseason, especially in comparison to the Texas Rangers, who handed out the largest contract in sports history to Alex Rodriguez at 10 years and $252 million. But what would end up being the biggest move of the offseason was one made by A-Rod's then former team in the Seattle Mariners.
The Seattle Mariners!
Signing the highly touted player from Japan named Ichiro Suzuki. The advantage for the Mariners lied in Jim Colbert, who was the Pacific Rim scouting coordinator for the Mariners, and he had been the pitching coach for the Blue Wave in the early 90s. And while Ichiro was shooting Nissan commercials, he stayed at Colbert's house in California, and he would give him jerseys of his favorite player, Ken Griffey Jr., though Griffey left for the Reds after '99. Colbert then convinced Pat Gillick that they should vigorously pursue him, and Gillick sold the idea to Mariners owner Hiroshi Yamauchi, and he wanted Ichiro so badly that he added a few $1 million of his own money to the bid. And it worked, as he would sign a 3-year, $14 million contract with the team. And after recording 1,278 hits with a .353 average, winning 7 batting titles and 7 gold gloves in Japan, he was heading to Seattle. And another big reason a small market team was able to sign him was many MLB teams still didn't believe in him because of his small size. But they would all have regrets. But still, going into the season, the Yankees had the best odds to win the World Series, while the Braves, having won the division in every full season since 1991, had the best odds in the National League, while the Red Sox, after signing Manny Ramirez, the Mets fresh off a pennant, and the Giants with the reigning NL MVP in Jeff Kent, and the one who was about to hold a monopoly over the award in Barry Bonds, were right behind them, while the Diamondbacks, under the first full year Johnson and Schilling, were itching behind the frontrunners. It was a season that could go many ways, and spring training brought a few surprises. Mariners fans became concerned as Ichiro struggled in spring, while on the other side, Cardinal fans were optimistic, as a young prospect named Albert Pujols impressed during the spring. And though doubtful in the beginning, he forced his way onto the opening day roster, and he changed the franchise from then on. But maybe the most memorable moment of the year came during spring training. On March 24th, the winner of the last 2 Cy Young Awards in Randy Johnson threw a pitch to Calvin Murray, and in the ball's way was a bird, who would tragically lose its life. Johnson avoided jail time for this, and it may have been a sign for the Diamondbacks, as sometimes great things need sacrifice. And there were a sign of things to come in a season full of milestones and records that were seen right away. Hideo Nomo threw a no-hitter in his Red Sox debut, the earliest no-hitter in MLB history at that point, as became the 4th pitcher to throw a no-hitter in both leagues, his first being the only no-hitter thrown at Coors Field in '96. But that month also saw Barry Bonds become the 17th member of the 500 home run club, while Luis Gonzalez tied Ken Griffey Jr. for the most home runs in the month of April at 13. And that was just the start. The month of May saw Randy Johnson become the 4th pitcher to strike out 20 in a game, joining Tom Chaney, who had 21 in a 16-inning game, and Roger Clemens, who did so twice, and Kerry Wood. Johnson got his 20 in 9 innings, and he could have gone out there for the 10th, but he decided not to, which is why it's not considered a 9-inning game, but we all know the truth. And another 9-inning record was made 4 days later, as A.J. Burnett would walk 9 Padres in a no-hitter, throwing 65 strikes and 64 balls, the most walks in a 9-inning no-hitter. But as May came to an end, there were surprising teams across the board. The biggest surprise at that point lied in the Philadelphia Phillies, going 34-18 with a rookie Jimmy Rollins and a prime Bobby Abreu leading the way, as they had the National League's best record. And just like the team right behind them in the Cubs, they weren't expected to do much that season. But then again, it's a very long season. However, the biggest shock lied in the whole league's best team, as the Mariners already reached 40 wins through just 62 games. Holding a 14-game lead over Oakland already, the team leader was the one who struggled in spring, and Ichiro Suzuki, who proved right away he belonged in the majors. He won Rookie of the Month again in May, after hitting .379 in 27 games, and neither him nor the Mariners stopped going. At the All-Star break, the Mariners were 39 games above .500, and had a 19-game lead in the division. And as if things weren't already going well enough, they were also hosting the All-Star game in Seattle. With voting expanding internationally, Ichiro deservedly received the most votes in history, and he joined John Olerud, Brett Boone, and Edgar Martinez in the starting lineup, and 4 more from the team would join them. And on the NL side, the top vote getter was Barry Bonds, Already with 39 home runs, 73 RBIs, and a 1.314 OPS, this was just the first of many accolades these two would win. And as Randy Johnson and Roger Clemens started on the mound, in a year where rookies and young players started defining the next generation, this All-Star game was the send-off for a grave from the previous one. Before the start of the first inning, Alex Rodriguez agreed to switch to third to allow Ripken Jr. in his final All-Star game to play shortstop, to set the record for the most All-Star appearances at short at 15. In the third inning, Ripken hit a home run to put them up 1-0. One of the best moments in All-Star game history, as the American League won 4-1, becoming the first American League player to win 2 All-Star game MVPs. And as the month after the All-Star game where things started to become more clear, the Twins led the AL Central for much of the season and also held the number 2 spot in the American League, which most were gunning for at that point. But on August 5th, the Cleveland Indians, who had ran the division over the past 6 years, got their spark, a game that actually had historical importance in the end, when they would erase a 12-run lead to beat none other than the Seattle Mariners, a comeback that tied the MLB record as they were down 12 in the 7th inning, and in 11 innings, they would end up winning 15-14. At that point, they were up half a game, and by the end of the month, they were up 5.5, and they never lost their lead. And in the NL Central, the same thing happened, as the Astros gained a 4-game advantage after the Cubs held the top spot for much of the season, with the Cardinals now in reach. And that left so many questions and storylines going into September. In the National League, multiple teams were within striking range in every division, and with a 19-game lead over a team 22 games over 500, could the Mariners win at least 19 games to set a new American League record, or they could set the all-time record with 21. And 3 years after the excitement of the home run chase between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, there was another one, but it was just one man, and Barry Bonds. And going into September, he had 57 home runs, needing 24 to set the new record. But nearly halfway through the month, all those questions suddenly seemed so unimportant. After the events of September 11th, all games on the day were postponed, and all future games were until further notice. It wasn't until September 17th that games would resume, and baseball was seen as a part of the healing process. Every stadium had an odd, almost awkward feeling in it that was bound to appear, but those feelings quickly ran aside. Emotional speeches from Jack Buck, and the unity between players and fans alike was a rare and beautiful sight. The evil empire suddenly became a team everyone could root for, but no moment was as big as the one brought by the other New York team. The first major sporting event held in New York took place on the 21st at Shea Stadium as the Mets took on the Braves. It was an emotional night with a full crowd who would be subjected to extra security, and the Braves scored first in the 4th, though the Mets would tie things in the bottom half. The Braves retook the lead in the 8th, but the Mets showed signs of life after a one-out walk, and Mike Piazza stepped up to the plate with the crowd ready to explode. And in a game that Piazza believed they had to win, he had his moment by driving the second pitch of the at-bat over the center field fence, sending the emotional fans into a frenzy. It was really the defining moment of sports, the immediate aftermath, and was a moment bigger than the game. The lingering effect of the tragedy was felt throughout the rest of the season, and it caused the regular season to be moved back to October 7th. And plenty happened in between there. The Phillies held the NL East lead for much of the season. The Braves, who had a ton of experience with division races, simply chipped away at the lead, and they would clinch the division with a nice 20-3 win over the Marlins for their 10th straight division title. Meanwhile, in the NL Central, a team who was in the mix for almost the entire season made the late season push. On the 2nd of September, the Cardinals were 7 games out, but they finished the month 16-3. As though Sammy Sosa casually hit another 60 home runs, the Cubs' late season collapse prolonged the curse, and it would come down to the final day in a matchup between the Cardinals and Astros in St. Louis, which the Astros won, as both teams won 93 games. But the tiebreaker would give the division to the Cardinals, while the Astros had the wildcard. And the one who really helped the Cardinals win the division was that rookie they called up in spring training, named Albert Pujols, hitting .329 with 37 home runs and 130 RBIs, tying a Cardinals record set by Emmett Snaggs Heydricks in 1899 for the most hits in a rookie season at 194. He unanimously won the Rookie of the Year over many future All-Stars. In many years, he would have been the first NL rookie to win MVP, but in a year like this, a 4th place finish is the best he'll get. Sammy Sosa did become the first player to hit 60 home runs in a season 3 times, and what's crazy is in all those seasons, he was not the league leader. Mark McGwire led in 98 and 99, and the man responsible this year was Barry Bonds. The magnitude of this chase wasn't near what it was in 98, in part because in 98, it was 2 on-division rivals going after a 38-year record, and there was something behind the scenes kind of becoming obvious at that point that we'll get to later. But nothing was going to stop Bonds. Before September would end, he had 69 home runs.
Nice.
and after the first time he went 3 games without hitting a home run since the end of August, he became the second player to reach 70 in Houston, before he would come back home and against their biggest rival in the Dodgers in an important game in the NL West race to start the third with no reason to intentionally walk him. Chan-Ho Park pitched to him, he sat back, and he hit his 71st home run of the season. He would add another before the end of the game they lost 11-10, and he would add another the next day to finish with 73 home runs, a record that will be very hard to top and one that will always have questions behind it, with reasons that were becoming clear at that point. But all of that was not enough to get the Giants to the playoffs, as in a 3-team race that went down to the end, it was the Diamondbacks who ended up on top. It was their pitching led by Randy Johnson, recording a 2.49 ERA with 372 strikeouts over 249.2 innings as he won his 3rd straight Cy Young. But on the offensive side, it was Luis Gonzalez with 57 home runs and 142 RBIs and a 1.117 OPS that led the way, as in a year where numerous players put up MVP-level seasons, Gonzalez would finish a casual 3rd, but in the end, he would get the final say. The NL had more drama at the end, as the Indians put the division away as mentioned, and after a disappointing season by the Red Sox, the Yankees won the division with ease. And with the divisions wrapped, and the A's with their 102 wins to clear wildcard, the only question was, could the Mariners do it? After clinching the division with their 106th win on September 19th, they went on their longest losing streak of the season, which was a whopping 4 games. But after they won 4 games in a row, putting them at 110 wins with 8 games to go, and after a loss to Oakland, they would have to win every game in order to break the record. And they were on their way. On the 5th, a young 39-year-old Jamie Moyer would pitch a gem against the Rangers for win number 115, which passed the 98 Yankees for the most wins in American League history. Then the next night, 5 pitchers combined to throw a shutout, as they won 1-0 to tie the 1906 Cubs with 116 wins. And there was 1 game left. But after a Rafael Palmeiro RBI single in the 9th, the Mariners couldn't score the bottom half, as Pat Mahomes picked up a win, which put an end to the Magic regular season, as fans gave them a standing ovation despite the loss. And in that last game, Ichiro picked up his 242nd and his last hit of the season. That's setting the rookie record by 19, a record that will be very hard to top, and also the most hits in a season since 1930. But in 2001, he also led in plate appearances and at-bats, along with average at 350, and stolen bases at 56, the first rookie to do so since Jackie Robinson in 1949, and he would join Fred Lynn as the second rookie to win MVP, putting up numbers that went beyond expectations and led to an absolute dream season. And so the playoffs were set, almost the same as the previous year, but in different order. The Mariners were the favorites at that point, but only slightly higher than the Yankees, while every NL team except the Braves were given the same odds. But before those playoffs started, there were a few more career milestones set. As mentioned, it was a season of saying goodbye to old legends and saying hello to some new ones. Ripken had his real final goodbye at the All-Star game, but on October 6, Tony Gwynn would record his 3,141st hit, that being the final one of his career, finishing his career with an average of 338, the 11th highest of all time at that point. And the next day, his teammate Rickie Henderson would record his 3,000th hit on the final day of the season. Henderson didn't really get a great send-off like some others, as he bounced around teams and even some independent teams at the end. But this, along with setting the walks, runs, and games played in left field record that season, was his own deserved farewell. And in a season full of milestones, storylines, and drama, the postseason was a continuation. The only division series without that was between the Astros and the Braves. Chipper's home run in Game 1 set the tone, and they would go on to sweep the series. Meanwhile, the other NLDS between the Diamondbacks and Cardinals was the opposite. The teams went back and forth through the first 4 games, with gems pitched by Curt Schilling in Game 1, and Albert Pujols' first postseason home run hit off Randy Johnson in Game 2, which brought things to a Game 5. It was a rematch of Game 1 with Matt Morris and Curt Schilling, and things were similar in Game 5 to the 1-0 Game 1. The only run to the first 7 innings was scored on a Reggie Sanders solo home run, but the Cardinals tied things in the 8th by finally getting to Schilling with a J.D. Drew solo home run. Schilling finished the 9th, the game tied at 1, and the Cardinals were in trouble right away after Matt Williams hit a leadoff double. Midray Cummings pinch ran for Williams after he got to third on a sac bunt. Then on a safety squeeze attempt by Tony Womack, Cummings got caught at the plate as Greg Colburn went to second. And 2 years after being eliminated on a walk-off home run, they won their first playoff series on the Womack single after that failed squeeze attempt, an inning that was a telling sign of things to come. Meanwhile in the American League, both series had drama. The Yankees had their hands full despite having home field advantage against the 102-win Oakland A's, and it looked like the A's were getting their revenge from the previous year as they won the first 2 games at Yankee Stadium. Mark Mulder leading the way in Game 1, and Tim Hudson pitching 8 scoreless innings in Game 2. The Yankees would need to win 3 straight to make it back to the ALCS, and it was a famous play in Game 3 that led the spark. The Yankees were leading 1-0 in the home half of the 7th, and with 2 out and Jeremy Giambi on first base, Terrence Long hit the ball to the right field corner. Shane Spencer missed both cutoff man with his throw, and just when it seemed Giambi would score easily to tie the game, Jeter suddenly swooped across the diamond, reached out, and shoveled the ball to Posada, who would swipe tag Giambi, who did not slide. That play changed the momentum of the series, as the Yankees held on to win 1-0, and Bernie Williams drove in 5 in a 9-2 victory in Game 4 to send the series back to the Bronx. In Game 5, the Cy Young winner Roger Clemens struggled early, but Alfonso Soriano's 2-run single in the second inning and a solo home run by David Justice would be the difference, as Mariano Rivera picked up a 2-inning save, and the Yankees would complete the comeback. Meanwhile, in the other ALDS, the Mariners faced the question of could they win when it really mattered, and they faced trouble right away. The Indians were streaking to end the year and had the second-best offense, shut them out in Game 1, led by Bartolo Colon. The Mariners won Game 2, but the Indians' high-powered offense showed itself in Game 3, as they won 17-2, and now the 116-win Mariners were on the ropes. But the Mariners went back to who they relied on the whole season. Freddie Garcia pitched a gem in Game 4, and a late Mike Cameron double gave them a victory in Game 4. And the do-or-die Game 5, they turned to Jamie Moyer. In just his 3rd playoff game including Game 2, he would also deliver, going 6 and giving up 1, as the late Edgar Martinez RBI would be the difference as the Mariners lived on. Up next for the Mariners in the ALCS were the Yankees, the last team they wanted to face, and that goes back to the experience. Game 1 matched Aaron Selly making his 3rd postseason start against Andy Pettitte in his 20th. Selly was solid over 6 innings, but Pettitte was dominant, throwing 8 innings of 1-run ball as the Yankees won 4-2. Game 2 was just as tough. Mike Mussina gave up a 2-run home run to Stan Javier, but the Yankees already had a 3-0 lead to that point thanks to Scott Brocious and Chuck Knobloch, and that was enough as they held on 3-2, putting Seattle down 2-0 as they were heading to the Bronx. Lou Piniella promised they'd make it back to Seattle, and the Mariners delivered in Game 3, exploding for 11 runs between the 5th and 7th, with Jamie Moyer picking up a win as they won 14-3. However, the turning point came in Game 4. Paul Abbott somehow held the Yankees hitless by 8 walks, while Roger Clemens kept Seattle scoreless with 5. Brett Boone's solo home run in the 8th briefly gave the Mariners the lead, but Bernie Williams would tie the game. In the 9th, rookie Alfonso Soriano would crush a walk-off home run, and the Yankees led 3-1, and the series felt essentially over. In Game 5, Pettitte once again silenced Seattle, and Bernie Williams homered again as the Yankees won 12-3, clinching their 4th straight pennant, as the Mariners' record-setting season ended short of the Fall Classic. Like so many teams in sports who set regular season win records, including the 1906 Cubs, they fell short of the ultimate goal, losing to the team that made it seem so easy at that point. And the question was, who are the Yankees going to play? In another matchup of a young, inexperienced team versus a team of playoff veterans, it looked like it was the other way around. Randy Johnson outdueled Greg Maddux in Game 1 with a complete game shutout. Then the Braves took Game 2, but then things went to Atlanta, and the Diamondbacks exploded for 16 combined runs in Game 3 and 4. And in Game 5, Johnson was on the mound again, and this time he went up against Tom Glavine, and he would best him, giving up just 2 runs over 7, while Byung-Hyun Kim came in for a 2-inning save in a 3-2 game to give the Diamondbacks their first pennant in just their 4th year of existence. The fastest an expansion team has ever made it to the World Series, besting the Florida Marlins by just 1 year. And that set up for a Yankees vs. Diamondbacks World Series. Based on talent, it could be easy to see the Diamondbacks as the favorites, but again, the experience and the pedigree plays a factor here, which is why the Yankees were the betting favorites going into the series. And they had a plethora of support they wouldn't usually have. All those factors made a team in their 4th year of existence versus the most successful team of all time, in the midst of a dynasty, seem a little like a David vs. Goliath matchup. But it didn't seem that way to start. Things opened in Arizona, with Curt Schilling facing Mike Mussina. The Yankees struck first on a Bernie Williams double, but Craig Counsell tied the game in the bottom of the 1st. And then the Diamondbacks exploded from there. Luis Gonzalez's 2-run home run sparked a 4-run 3rd, followed by another 4 in the 4th, as Schilling cruised through 7 innings as they took Game 1 9-1. Game 2 marked the 1,000th playoff game in MLB history and brought another marquee matchup, Randy Johnson versus Andy Pettitte, and Danny Bautista's RBI double in the 2nd was all Johnson needed. He fired a complete game shutout with 11 strikeouts, with just 4 Yankees reaching base the whole game. Pettitte did pitch well outside of a few mistakes, but the Yankee offense went cold, leaving the Yankees scoreless for the last 17 innings, as the Diamondbacks now had a commanding 2-0 series lead. But back in New York for Game 3, George W. Bush gave his famous ceremonial first pitch, which seemed to set the tone. Roger Clemens looked sharp, striking out 9 over 7, while Jorge Posada's home run and an RBI single from Scott Brosius gave the Yankees a 2-1 lead. Mariano Rivera would then come out for a 6-out save to seal a 2-1 win, which matched the series standings. And this is when things started to get interesting. Game 4 was played on Halloween, and it turned into one of the best nights in World Series history. Orlando Hernandez and Curt Schilling matched each other through 7, each giving up a lone solo home run. But Arizona took a 3-1 lead in the 8th after RBIs from Matt Williams and Luis Gonzalez. Byung-Hyun Kim shook out the side in the 8th, and the 9th with 2 outs and a runner on, Tino Martinez would blast a game-tying 2-run home run. Some still say it was the loudest Yankee Stadium had ever been. Then the 10th, as the clock struck midnight and November baseball was played for the first time, Derek Jeter would hit a walk-off home run to right field, earning him the nickname of Mr. November. But that was just the start. The very next night, the Yankees pulled off another miracle. Behind Mussina, they trailed 2-0 in the 9th, before once again, the Yankees hit another dramatic 2-run home run off Byung-Hyun Kim, this time off the bat of Scott Brosius. Things would go all the way to the 12th, and the rookie Alfonso Soriano delivered a walk-off single, giving the Yankees a 3-2 series lead, with the momentum completely shifting. Back in Arizona, Andy Pettitte was knocked out early, and Jay Woodsick was shelled, as the Diamondbacks erupted for 8 runs in the 3rd, as Randy Johnson dominated again, and the Diamondbacks won 16-2, setting a World Series record with 22 hits. And that set up for what seemed inevitable, with a winner-take-all Game 7. The pitchers' duel was set up, as Curt Schilling on short rest would face Roger Clemens. Danny Bautista's RBI double put Arizona ahead 1-0 in the 6th, but Tino Martinez tied it in the 7th. And then, Alfonso Soriano's solo home run in the 8th would give the Yankees a 2-1 lead. And with Mariano Rivera, the greatest closer of all time, on the mound, it appeared the Yankees were destined for their 4th straight title. But things unraveled quickly in the bottom of the 9th. Mark Ray singled, and a botched bunt play put 2 runners on with no outs. And after a failed sacrifice, Tony Womack would hit a game-tying double down the right field line, Rivera's first blown postseason save since 1997. Then after Craig Counsell was hit by a pitch, the bases were loaded, with Luis Gonzalez up to bat. And with the infield drawn in, he would hit a bloop single, scoring Jay Bell to win the World Series for the Diamondbacks. In just their 4th year of existence, the Diamondbacks became the fastest expansion team in American sports to win a championship since the 1971 Milwaukee Bucks. Behind dominant pitching from Johnson and Schilling and late-inning heroics from unlikely players, they toppled the Yankee dynasty in one of the most dramatic World Series ever played. It was the cherry on top for a season with it all. All the storylines and notable aspects of the late 90s, aka the steroid era, all wrapped into one. The team of the late 90s that seemed invincible, along with the closer that seemed invincible, were stopped by an unlikely source. In a year that saw an unlikely team win the most games in almost a century, also being led by an unlikely source. While there were players reaching career milestones, milestones for games, and milestones for seasons. And it was after this season where it became pretty clear to even the biggest deniers that the ridiculous offensive stats may not be what they seem. Testing for steroids in the minors began that year, and the 1996 MVP Ken Caminiti would be featured in a Tell-All Sports Illustrated story in 2002, where he revealed his own use and how rampant it was in the game. And MLB had no choice but to respond at that point, starting with light penalties on survey testing. Just a few years later, some of the game's stars were testifying before Congress. The home run craze was something that almost seemed too good to be true. And when a record that stood for 38 years was suddenly broken numerous times over a 4-year span, it was just an open secret that fans were kind of denying until it got to a point. In a sense, 2001 was the last unabashed season of the steroid era, getting to watch Sosa pass Maris for the 3rd time, and Bonds pass everyone else before he would do so again in 2007, with tons of scrutiny and questions behind it all. 2001 had everything possible in a season, with the records, introductions, milestones, and a finish with one of the best World Series of all time, while the shock and tragedy brought a sense of camaraderie between it all. A season that fans wish they could repeat, but that would require a controversial ask.
Can we have the players insert steroids into their butt cheeks like it's 2001 again?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.